Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa and I'm a current student at the University of Virginia. I'm a fourth year and I'm also a member of the UVA Survivors Club. And us in the club, we wanted to make this video on things that we wish those of us who have gone through Title IX wish we had known before we had reported. And there's so much to say, but I consolidated it to just these 10 things. And for those of you who are on the edge of trying to decide whether or not you want to do it, I hope that this video is helpful to you. Also, please ignore the bed. My friend still hasn't moved in yet, so that's why her bed is not made. Okay, number 1. There is a formal and an informal process. So in the informal process, both parties have to consent to this. So that just means that you and your assailant both have to agree to go through the informal process. In addition to that, also the coordinator has to all agree to go through this process. And then for the formal complaint, that just means that there's going to be a formal investigator, and at the end, if your assailant is found responsible, there's going to be an administrative panel. One really important thing to keep in mind, I'm not quite sure if this is applicable still after the 2020 new regulations, but when I reported back in 2019, if there's any penetration, anal or vaginal, you don't have the choice to do the informal process. You have to go through the informal investigation. Now, I don't know if this is still true because of the new regulations, but when I went through it, I remember I didn't have that option. And they told me, whether you like it or not, we're going through the formal process because there was either anal or vaginal penetration. Number 2, if you are in the same class as your perpetrator, they can't automatically remove the perpetrator from the class. That is because they operate on the premise of innocent until proven guilty. And so they can't make the move. And so if you don't want to be in their class, unfortunately, you are most likely the one who's going to have to move. So just because you report doesn't mean they can make the move. So that's just really something important to know before you report. Number 3, really important. Because of the new regulations, some schools can no longer adjudicate cases of assault that occurred off campus. So let's say, for example, you don't live on student housing and you live like in your own apartment off campus, they may not be able to adjudicate it. Luckily, I know for UVA, they didn't adopt this regulation, so if you were assaulted off grounds, they can still adjudicate it. Number 4, this process takes a long time. And I mean a long time. I remember for my case, I reported in February and it didn't end until mid-June, so over the summer. And so that's like 5 months right there. And it can really take a toll on you. It takes a lot of energy. And I remember when I was talking to my friends who have also gone through Title IX, we all agreed and said the same thing, where we felt like we were a student by day and a detective by night. So basically, during the day, we go to classes, we'd be normal, but then at night, we're, reading the reports or we're sobbing over what's happening. To give you an example, I remember my case, it was during finals time. And I remember I was in the library and I remember I literally set a 15-minute timer on my phone so I could cry for 15 minutes and then go back to studying mitochondria and photosynthesis and whenever I had to study for my bio exam the next day. So that's literally how life is. You have to compartmentalize your life and it takes a lot of energy. And so I just think it's really important to know that, like, this is not an easy process. Number 5. If you have physical evidence, such as clothing, for example, I would recommend possibly giving that to Title IX instead of the police if you're thinking about giving it to the police. This is one mistake I made in my case. I had some clothing and I gave it to the police, and I didn't realize that because of that, because of property rights, Title IX couldn't really use it as an exhibit in the case, so they really couldn't even take it into account in my case because the clothing belonged to the police. That's just something I didn't know, but it's something to keep in mind, that if you do have some physical evidence like that, you may want to give it to Title IX rather than the police if you're thinking about giving it to the police. Number 6, do not bring up past experiences of assault. It's irrelevant. I made this mistake in my interview, and I brought up something that happened years ago with a different person, and it's completely irrelevant. Just don't bring it up, and they redacted it in my case. Unless that assault has to do with that person and you've been assaulted multiple times by that one person that you're reporting, then you can. But if it's something from your childhood, something irrelevant, just don't bring it up because they can't use it. Okay, number 7, this is really important. Make sure that you and your witnesses are on the same page if you have witnesses. So for example, let's say you were with a bunch of your friends that night. I would really recommend before all of you go in to do your interview that you all are on the same page. So look at text messages, see what times things were, where were you, and if you drank, like what did you drink, how much did you drink. Those things are really important because the more clear and concise your story is, the more credible it's going to be. Number 8, so make sure that you have an idea of the sequence of events that happened that night of your assault. And I know this can be really hard, but it, again, same as what I just said, the more clear and concise your story is, the more credible it's going to be. And so I highly recommend that. So maybe that means you write it down on a piece of paper, or what also can be really helpful is if you go to your therapist. And when you're with your therapist, then your therapist can help you bring back those memories that you maybe have forgotten or whatever, and help just kind of piece the puzzle together of what happened that night. Because it's important to keep in mind that these investigators are fallible human beings, and they can get lost in the sauce. And so if people are saying a bunch of different things, it's not going to make your story look as credible. So the more clear it is, the better. Number 9, be mindful of your words. So by that I mean, let's say for example, this is really common, but a lot of people are extremely calm after their assault, or they freeze, fight, flight, or freeze. Those are common responses after an assault. If you freeze, totally normal. But I recommend don't say that you're calm, because these universities are looking at these cases from a liability standpoint. Okay, they don't want to get sued. And so they're less likely, unfortunately, to believe someone if you're going to be extremely calm after the assault. And unfortunately, that's just the way things operate. Instead, what I recommend saying is disassociated, numb. Those are better words to describe what really was going on after that. So just be very mindful of your words and the way that you describe, because I'm telling you, investigators will pick apart your words. Just be mindful that can happen. So really be mindful of your words and the way you describe things and your emotions. Okay, lastly, number 10. So this is the appeal process. So there is an appeal process. So if it comes to a point and at the end of it, and if your assailant is found not responsible, you can appeal. However, it's a really tough process. And Title IX, in very, 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 very rare cases, do they change their decision. I'm very weary to support people in appealing. And keep in mind that you don't have an unlimited time to appeal. You have 5 days after they give their final report to appeal. So you can't appeal a year later and be like, okay, I disagree. No, they only give you like about 5 days. The only times when I think it would be a good decision to appeal is if there is new evidence that arise that couldn't have been found during the investigation process. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you had a rape kit done and finally the results just came in and what the DNA was and blah, 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 then you could appeal because that evidence was not available during the time, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Also, I really recommend when you're reading the final report, don't read it alone. Just do yourself a favor and do not read it alone. It can be really hard emotionally, and I think it's really important that you have support. You know, make an appointment with your therapist or if your mom, your friend, whoever, just make sure you have support when you're opening the document. And major disclaimer, when you're reporting, be ready that the outcome that you desire may not be what you get. So if you're reporting because I just want my voice to be heard, I just, want this person to know that what they did was wrong, then that's fine. But if you're going into the process thinking, I'll be okay, I'll be complete, if they're found responsible, don't do it. Because there's a good chance that might not happen. And so I just don't go in the process thinking that. There's so much more I could say on this. Honestly, I could make 10 more things on what you could know, but this is just the top 10. And if you have any other questions, put it in the comments. Please let us know. UVA Survivors also has their own Instagram, which you can go on. And we're having a website coming out soon with more resources on how to help and on restorative justice and a lot of great things. So I really hope that this was helpful. And I'm sending love to everyone who sees this. And I hope this helped. See you next time. Bye.